Hello, and welcome to the Yankees Seasons Podcast, Episode 11, Courage. Last time we stopped to examine the Yankees' April numbers, and then stopped to smell the May flowers as the Bombers split a 2-game series with the Tigers. I'd like to start this time with the sporting news, where in the May 2nd issue, writer Joe King searches for answers to the question of why all 3 New York baseball teams saw fairly significant drops in attendance to start off the 1956 season. Weather had been bleak on the 20th of April for the Yankees home opener that saw just over 17,500. King also poses along with weather that poor parking solutions, and also, quote, with all 3 clubs televising home games with some road games in the package, perhaps the TV saturation point has been reached. King doesn't just look at each team's respective opening days, though. As he notes, the Yankees bounce back with crowds of 26,644 and then 35,204 for their Saturday and Sunday games against the Red Sox. The Giants, meanwhile, have been playing Pittsburgh and saw their attendance drop to an astonishing 2,493 and then 1,922. It's the 3rd game of the year, and you can't even get 2,000 butts in the seats. Giants Vice President Chub Feeney chose to just blame the weather. "We believe the weather is chiefly responsible," he's quoted as saying, with King in agreement, adding himself that it seems true that New Yorkers will not sit in damp stadia in April, regardless of the attraction. King takes us further, and I mainly include this because I believe it ushers in one of the main theses of this project, which is 1956 is the last true summer of baseball where New York would have 3 teams. Everyone will say 1957 is right there. You can look it up. I'm not being silly, I know. It will say New York Giants and Brooklyn Dodgers for 1957. However, both of those teams had announced their planned departures from New York by the summer of 1957. 1956 serves as the last beautiful moment for a city about to go through not 1 but 2 breakups. But that will be explored more throughout, and mainly at the end of the season. But tying it back to what Joe King wrote in Sporting News. King looked into the attendance not just from the prior few years, but the previous decade, to emphasize his point, that while one could blame weather, or parking, or the random moments of happenstance that keep someone from going to a ball game, that information is, as he writes, subsidiary to the fact that yearly attendance has been on the steady decline for all 3 clubs in New York. In 1948, the Yankees drew 2,373,901. And the year earlier, the Dodgers had brought in 1,863,552, and the Giants 1,600,793. A few years later, those numbers had already dropped. By 1951, the Yankees, Dodgers, and Giants numbers were 1,950,107, 1,282,628, 1,537,811, respectively. A drop of over 400,000 fans for the Yankees, 600,000 for the Dodgers, and just over 60,000 for the Giants. One might think it doesn't necessarily show a trend just to compare a drop in attendance between 2 isolated years. So King went 2 years further and looked at 1953, where the Yankees saw 1.49 million fans, the Dodgers saw just over 1 million fans, and the Giants dropped all the way to 824,000 fans. The 1954 Giants, the next year where Willie Mays was back from military service and they'd eventually win the World Series, did hit over 1 million again, but on the whole, the picture isn't great. In a 6-year period between 1947 and 1953, each ball club had seen at least 600,000 to 800,000 fewer fans, and the numbers indicate that 1956 will continue the trend. Those years, particularly 1949 to 1953, remember, is when the Yankees began and reigned for their 5 consecutive World Series wins, something that had never happened and has never happened since. And yet there still was a steady decline. This truly may well be the last real summer of baseball as it was, quote-unquote. And that's said without a sense of an inevitability, but rather merely as a highlight of the warning signs that a change was coming. They see it. They're writing about it. It showed up earlier during spring training when they announced the schedule for games that would be televised, specifically when it broke down the different potential audience pockets and advertising markets. Southern and Northern California being of particular interest, and now it shows its head in the declining attendance on the East Coast. However, more on that to come much later. Thursday, May 3rd, the Yankees would play an afternoon game at the stadium, welcoming 4,308 fans to see them play the Kansas City Athletics. I know we're all excited to get into the game, but in case anyone listening isn't quite familiar with baseball franchises and how moving franchises evolve, one might think that the Kansas City Athletics, a professional baseball team in Kansas City, changed their name and now they're the professional baseball team in Kansas City playing called the Royals. But actually, they're the currently homeless just Athletics. The team started all the way back in Philadelphia with Connie Mack's Philadelphia Athletics, where he fielded teams that boasted players like Al Simmons and Jimmy Fox, as well as pitcher Lefty Grove and catcher Mickey Cochran, who Mickey Mantle's father's favorite player and Mickey's namesake. The Athletics moved from Philadelphia to Kansas City in 1954 before eventually heading out even further west to Oakland in 1968, where they would play until their last season in 2024. The currently wandering Athletics will play in Nevada in 2028, marking the fourth city that the franchise will officially call home. Okay, back to 1956. Reality would start to sink in for our favorite pitcher, the wild driver of the Dawn, Don Larsen, as he would face a Kansas City lineup featuring the player many thought would be the one to break the Yankee color barrier a few years prior, Vic Power, who had come through the Yankees farm system and had played with the likes of Bill Skowron, Bob Cerv, and Andy Carey during his time with the minor league team, the Kansas City Blues, in 1952 and 1953. In 53, he hit .349 and led the team with 217 hits in just 149 games. He would be traded to the Athletics that offseason and debuted in April of 1954. Larsen would be facing Power in the 7-hole, with the rest of the lineup for the Athletics being Joe DeMaestri at shortstop leading off. Next would be Enos Country Slaughter at right field, who you might know for his years as a member of the St. Louis Cardinals of the late 30s and 40s, where he won a couple of World Series rings and regularly was named an All-Star. Or you might know him as the guy that spiked Jackie Robinson at first base on August 20th, 1947, which Robinson maintained was absolutely racially motivated, but Slaughter would always just chalk it up to a tough play. Batting after Slaughter was left fielder Gus Neal, and then center fielder Harry Simpson would bat cleanup. Batting fifth was third base Hector Lopez, then Joe Ginsberg batting sixth. Vic Power at first, like I said earlier, would bat seventh. Spook Jacobs would bat eighth and play second base, and Art Ciccarelli would pitch and bat ninth. On the Yankees' defensive side, we see all the usual suspects. Bauer leading off, then Billy Martin, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, and Bill Skowron in the 2, 3, 4, and 5 spots, respectively, all playing their usual positions. Gil McDougall bats sixth and is at shortstop. Bob Cerv is taking over at left field duties, and batting eighth is Andy Carey playing third base. Don Larsen would round out the lineup and take the mound for the Thursday afternoon's bout. Days were cold after so much rain had fallen that spring in New York, and this Thursday would be no different. 60 degrees by noon, more than likely it would poke its head up to 65 for the game, but never over that. While the temperatures in the air were cold, the temperatures coming off the bat were hot. While a single from Mickey Mantle to start his afternoon in the bottom of the first was really all they would have, things really picked up in the top half of the second inning. Harry Simpson would ground out to Larsen, who would throw it over to Moose on first to record the first out, but a single from the next batter, Hector Lopez, would put a runner on first with one out. That brought up Joe Ginsberg, a catcher, who coming into the game was batting .276, a very respectable average and third highest on the team through the Athletics' early campaign. Ginsberg would hit one over Bauer's head into the short porch and give the A's a quick 2-0 lead. That brought up Vic Power, ready to put his own stamp on the game early. He smacked a ball to the hole at short to reach first. Spook Jacobs, who's definitely been added to the list of great baseball player names, rocked a ball up the middle to get a base hit himself and moved Vic Power over to third. Stepping into the box was pitcher Art Ciccarelli, who Larsen was able to force into a ground out, but a very rare error charged to Yogi Berra meant that they were only able to get one out. Spook Jacobs was able to move to third, and Vic Power scored to take the A's lead to 3-0. Flipping the lineup, Joe DeMaestri kept the singles party alive by scoring Jacobs off of a single to left field. 4-0 Athletics, and Enos Country Slaughter was ready to continue the pile-on. He smacked a double over Mantle's head. DeMaestri was able to score, and it took the lead up to 5-0 Athletics. That was enough out of Don Larsen for Casey, and he brought in Tommy Byrne to take over. Byrne started his afternoon by intentionally walking Gus Neal, the 300-hitting left fielder, and that brought up Harry Simpson, who was batting more than 60 points below Neal with a .239 average. Byrne was able to pop up Simpson to Bob Cerv and left, and get out of the inning without further damage. The Yankees had no immediate response. Skowron, McDougall, and Cerv would go 1-2-3 and send Tommy Byrne right back to work. The Yankees would hardly respond in the next inning when Andy Carey and Tommy Byrne hit back-to-back singles. Hank Bauer grounded into a double play, but scored Andy Carey, but Billy Martin would end the inning by flying out to right. Mantle would start to wake up the bats in the bottom of the fourth when he started the inning with his number match home run to deep left field, lucky number 7 on the year, and bringing the game to 5-2. Berra, Skowron, and McDougal would be retired in order after it. And to make matters worse, Vic Power was able to tack on a 6th run for the Athletics off of a double that scored Harry Simpson, and then Tommy Byrne intentionally walked Spook Jacobs to load the bases. He unintentionally walked Art Ciccarelli to score the Athletics' 7th run. Joe DeMaestri would ground out to shortstop Gil McDougald, who took the force out at second to end the inning, but with a now 5-run deficit. Starting off the bottom of the 5th, Bob Cerv would smack a ball down the left field line and ended up with a triple. Andy Carey would ground out, but the Athletics traded Carey's out at first for Cerv's run. It's 7-3 now. Elston Howard was called on by Casey Stengel to pinch hit for Tommy Byrne's pitcher spot in the lineup, and he would hit a single up the middle. Hank Bauer would then crush a ball off Art Ciccarelli that left fielder Gus O'Neill would watch fly. 7-5 Athletics now, thanks to a 2-run home run off the bat of Hank Bauer. Billy Martin popped out to shortstop, but Mickey Mantle would hit a ball to third base where Hector Lopez wasn't ready for it. Mantle was able to reach on an error, setting the table for Yogi, and boy was he ready to eat when he crushed the ball to deep right, to the track, and gone. Tie ball game. Elston Howard, who had pinched hit for the pitcher Tommy Byrne, was replaced with Tom Morgan, who took over the mound duties, now with a tie game, when Enos Slaughter, Gus O'Neill, and Harry Simpson would go 3 up, 3 down, although Gus would have a single before Simpson grounded into a double play. The Yankees must have thought it looked nice to go 1-2-3 because the two teams took turns going 3 up, 3 down through the 6th, the 7th, and to the top of the 8th. The bottom of the 8th would have basically been a rinse and repeat, although Yogi had snuck a single in there to go 4 up, 3 down. Tie game going into the top of the 9th. Slaughter would start the inning with a massive double, followed by Zerneal bunting for a base hit and moving Enos Slaughter to third. To take the lead, all Harry Simpson needed to do was fly out to Mickey Mantle for a sacrifice fly. Hector Lopez would fly out to left, and Joe Ginsberg would ground out to the pitcher Tom Morgan to end the top of the 9th and bring up Eddie Robinson, pinch hitting for Bob Cerv. He would ground out for the first out of the inning, and this is where I think maybe Casey Stengel dips his toe into silliness. I've looked up newspaper articles, magazine articles, anything to explain this, to no avail. If anyone has an explanation for this one, I'm all ears. With 1 out, Casey Stengel brings back third baseman Andy Carey to pinch hit with Mickey McDermott, the pitcher. I'm not trying to knock him. In 1955, he bat .263 and over 100 plate appearances, but taking out your third baseman in favor of a pitcher off the bench when Carey already hits in the 8-hole, like right before the pitching spot in the lineup, it's very Casey Stengel to me. It very much is a Casey Stengel move to me. McDermott pops out to the shortstop. That's why he pinch hit, to pop out to the shortstop, and that brings up Jerry Lumpy, pinch hitting for Tom Morgan, the pitcher. Because if you wanted to pinch hit for a pitcher, you could have just used your pitcher, Mickey McDermott. Anyway, Jerry Lumpy, pinch hitting for Tom Morgan, the pitcher, and he would ground out to end the game 8-7. A very dramatic start, an exhilarating comeback, but ultimately it comes down to a sac fly and some questionable pinch hitting, and that hands the Yankees their 5th loss of the season, and the Athletics, from Kansas, their 5th win of the season. The next day, May 4th, Casey Stengel brought Bob Turley to the mound to face off against the Athletics. Turley had been roughed up in his first 2 starts, giving up 10 runs and only striking out 9. His 6.92 ERA was the highest among starters, beating out even Mickey McDermott's 6.75. Facing off against the A's, Turley was able to go 3 up, 3 down to start the game, and the Yankees would jump out ahead to give their man some run support. Martin would hit a 1-out triple, and Mantle would walk. Barrow would strike out looking, but due to an error by second baseman Spook Jacobs when Bill Skowron smacked the ball to him, Skowron was able to reach first. Mantle was able to make it to second, and Martin scored the first run from third. Gil McDougald would walk as well, the second walk issued by Athletic starter Alex Kellner, and it would load the bases. Bob Cerv would then watch a pitch go wild, allowing Mantle to score before he grounded out to third. But 2 runs would be scored due to an error and a wild pitch. Turley, back on the mound, needed that run support. Harry Simpson got a base hit, and then Hector Lopez would bunt it back to the pitcher. Turley's throw went wide, and both runners were able to advance, bringing Joe Ginsberg, the catcher, to the plate with no outs. He would pop a sacrifice fly to deep center, scoring Simpson and bringing the score back 2-1, before Vic Power and Spook Jacobs each flew out to end the inning. Alex Kellner, settling down back on the mound for the Athletics, got Andy Carey, Bob Turley, and Hank Bauer to each fly out to left, center, and then right respectively. The Athletics were able to tie it up off 2 walks by Turley and then a base hit by Harry Simpson up the middle, his second of the game in only the 3rd inning. 2-2 Athletics. Mantle would single with 1 out and then steal second during Bill Skowron's at-bat, but in the top of the 4th, Vic Power singled with 1 out, and then Spook Jacobs walked for Bob Turley's 3rd walk of the day. Alex Kellner, the pitcher, grounded out, and the Yankees took the out at second, but weren't able to turn the double play, leaving runners on the corners with 2 outs. Joe DeMaestri was able to get a base hit off of Turley this time, scoring Vic Power and giving the Athletics the 3-2 lead, and now here in the 4th inning, we've got ourselves a ball game. Walking the first batter of the inning, Kellner would immediately lose the lead when Bob Cerv hit his own triple that Friday afternoon, scoring McDougald and then scoring himself on Andy Carey's follow-up sacrifice fly. The Yankees tie and then retake the lead 4-3, but oh wait, Bob Turley wants to immediately walk Harry Simpson, which was enough for Casey. The old professor pulled his starter after only 4 innings of work and already 3 runs allowed, with another runner that's his responsibility. Bob Grimm was slow on a delivery, and Simpson tore off for second to put himself in scoring position. And score he would. Hector Lopez hit a double that scored Simpson. After Joe Ginsberg popped out to third baseman Andy Carey, Lopez would score from second on a base hit from Vic Power, and the back and forth continues, now 5-4 Athletics. The top half of the inning would end there, though, as Spook Jacobs would ground into a double play. Athletics manager Lou Boudreau kept Alex Kellner in to face Billy Martin, who he got to ground out. Kellner then walked Mantle, and in an absolute display of speed, Mantle would go all the way from first to score when Yogi Berra hit a single to center field. The throw from home was not in time, so Mantle would tie the game back at 5 apiece, and Yogi was able to advance to second on the throw to the plate. Joe Crimian would come into the game in relief of Kellner, and Berra was stranded at second on 2 consecutive groundouts from Bill Skowron and Gil McDougald. Bob Grimm looked to be settling in when he struck out Jack Crimian looking, and then Joe DeMaestri grounded out on a ball to Gil McDougald. Enos Slaughter was able to reach first when a throw to Skowron at first wasn't handled properly, and then capitalizing on their opportunity, Gus O'Neill hit a long double to score Slaughter, giving the Athletics the 6-5 lead. There has been scoring in the last 5 half innings, and now through the top half of the 6th, only 3 half innings have not seen someone touch the plate. Rain began rushing down onto the field. Yankee Stadium crew quickly turned on the lights, and the home plate umpire Red Flaherty showed no intention of calling the game. Crimian, other than walking Bob Grimm, was able to get through the inning with a pair of strikeouts on Bob Cerv and Hank Bauer, followed by a 1-2-3 inning from Grimm himself. The bottom half of the 7th also looked to be quiet. A ground out from Billy Martin to third, and then Mickey struck out looking. That brought Yogi Berra to the plate, down by a run. Crimian stared him down, but ended up throwing a meatball that Yogi took all the way to deep center. Tie ball game, 6-6. The top half of the 8th went fairly smooth, but in the bottom half, Athletics manager Boudreau and Yankees manager Casey Stengel started playing with things. The inning started with a defensive shift. Johnny Groth came on for Enos Slaughter and took over duties in center field, moving Harry Simpson over to right. Nothing crazy. Gil McDougald flew out to left field. 1 out. Bob Cerv then hit a single back up the middle and would move to third when Andy Carey followed it with a double to deep left field. Runners on second and third with 1 out and a tie ball game, 6-6. With a team full of players ready to contribute, manager Casey Stengel was ready to do his part too. Bob Grimm, the pitcher, was coming to the plate, so Casey called him back in favor of left-handed pinch hitter Eddie Robinson. That triggered A's manager Lou Boudreau to take out the right-handed pitcher Crimian for left-handed Tommy Lasorda. If you're a fan of baseball, yes, that Tommy Lasorda. Stengel saw the left-handed pitcher coming to the mound and took the bat out of left-handed Eddie Robinson and put it into the hands of right-handed batter Elston Howard. The platooning professor had just called a pinch hitter for his pinch hitter. Boudreau, in response, called for Lasorda to intentionally walk Howard, which he did. Casey even pinch ran for Howard, sending Tom Carroll out to run for Howard on first. Then, just because Casey can't leave well enough alone, when A's manager Boudreau took Lasorda out after intentionally walking Howard to bring in right-handed pitcher Tom Gorman to face the righty Hank Bauer, Casey again pinch hit, this time bringing in left-handed batter Joe Collins, the better fit for the matchup. Joe Collins, facing off in what was supposed to be his big matchup advantage, poked a tiny dribbler to short, but Bob Cerv was able to beat the throw home, breaking the tie and giving the Yankees the 7-6 lead. The shenanigans had paid off, and the Yankees had their lead. Billy Martin then grounded out to second, but Andy Carey was able to score on the force out, with Tom Carroll moving to third and Joe Collins to second. Mickey Mantle then came to the bat with the final nail for this rainy Friday afternoon coffin under the lights. He powered a shot through center, scored both runners, and gave the Yankees a now 10-6 lead. Jim Constanti would be brought in to close the game out, which he would, ending the slugfest in the favor of the Bronx Bombers. For the 5,318 that showed up to the game that afternoon, and I'm sure even fewer that stuck around through its wet end, what a show they were given. Mickey Mantle took his average up to .411 on the season, going 2 for 3 with 2 walks and 2 RBI, while Yogi had 2 RBI himself. For Casey, the manager who had been critiqued as nothing more than a button-pushing manager, boy did he push the right buttons in that 8th inning. The next afternoon, Saturday, May 5th, Stengel chose to push the McDermott button, handing the 27-year-old Mickey McDermott the ball, still chasing his first win of 1956. The Athletics had shifted some things around, giving 40-year-old Enos Slaughter the day off after he brought his batting average up to .344 the day before with his 2 hits. Joe Ginsberg would have his starting duties relieved by catcher Joe Astroth, not to be confused with Joe DeMaestri, who's at shortstop. Joe Collins on the Yankees side would not get the start because perhaps Casey thought maybe Lou Boudreau had pushed the Joe button enough for the both of them. Vic Power led off the game with a single, but then was replaced with Rance Pless as a pinch runner. I'm assuming this is a fatigue-based decision because Power does not join the injured list after the game. It was purely just he was brought out. No one wrote about it. No one said anything. Either way, Spook Jacobs would strike out, and then Gus O'Neill would walk to set up Harry Simpson's double play. Into the top half, and Pless stays in to take over at first base. Hank Bauer started the Yankees hitting off with an inside-the-park home run to center field. The 33-year-old war veteran showing his team he still has the legs to be a leadoff hitter, and the Yankees are on the board early. Billy Martin would walk, and Skowron snuck a single in, but that was the main action of the inning. In the top of the third, Elston Howard replaced Bob Cerv in left field at the start of the inning before McDermott would go 1-2-3. And then in the bottom half, who else? I feel like I haven't said his name enough yet this episode. Mickey Mantle would crush a 2-run home run, his 8th of the season, and with 2 RBI, it takes his season's total up to a league-leading 22. The Yankees add to their lead off the bat of their Oklahoma kid, and the score is 3-0. It would be the Athletics fighting back as the next real action in the game. In the top of the 7th, after striking out Harry Simpson looking, Mickey McDermott, still in the game and truthfully looking pretty locked in, walked Hector Lopez, and then gave up a single to Joe Finnegan, the third baseman. Runners on the corners, Joe DeMaestri walked into the box and hit a double off the center field wall, scoring both runners and clawing the Athletics back 3-2. Showing how locked in McDermott must have looked, or perhaps knowing his bullpen had just been exhausted the first 2 games of the series, Stengel kept McDermott on the mound. Boudreau pulled the catcher Joe Astroth in favor of pinch hitter Bill Reyna, who hit a ground ball to Andy Carey at third for the easy force out. Then Boudreau pulled the pitcher Lou Kretlow out for pinch hitter Johnny Groth, who would just hit a ground ball to Gil McDougald at short for another easy out at first. McDermott, looking at a runner in scoring position and only 1 out, with the same amount for run support, was able to get 2 outs to end the inning. Joe Ginsberg, who had pinch hit, would assume his position at catcher, and Mo Bershi, I couldn't apologize more for that one, would come into pitch against leadoff hitter Billy Martin. Martin would pop out to first baseman Rance Pless for the first out of the inning, and that brought up the red-hot Mickey Mantle. I'm not even referring to red-hot as in the season he's having. Mantle had already had that earlier home run and another base hit to stand at 2 for 3 the afternoon. It wasn't enough. Mantle stared down Mo Berthsky, and then with the swing of his bat, connected for his 9th home run of the season. The Commerce Comet was truly in orbit and had no intentions of landing. Mantle was greeted at the plate by Yogi, who after a handshake and congratulations, got to work himself, connecting for a home run of his own, also to the right field bleachers. This would be the first time in 1956 that Mantle and Berra connected for back-to-back home runs, and with a 3-run cushion thanks to his biggest stars, Casey Stengel was able to play a bit more unconventional, bringing in Don Larson to relieve Mickey McDermott on the mound. With the comfortable 5-2 lead, Larson worked the Athletics 1-2-3 in both the 8th and 9th inning, securing McDermott his first win of the season and earning himself his first save of the season. The Yankees had taken 2 games off the Athletics and pushed the record to an American League leading 11-5. Mantle had found a way to continue to outdo himself, bringing his average up from .388 after the prior series against the Tigers all the way up to .433, going 7 for 11 in the series with 3 home runs and 6 total RBI himself. While the Yankee center fielder had plenty to celebrate on the field, perhaps it was off the field that left his biggest statement that weekend in May 1956. Randy Roberts and Johnny Smith write in A Season in the Sun, The Rise of Mickey Mantle, about the mythos of Mickey Mantle. They use the example of his famous story in his autobiography, The Mick, where he throws out Jackie Robinson during the 1952 World Series. Through their research of box scores, all very public information that anyone can validate, that never happened. Mickey has this whole story of throwing out Jackie after Robinson had dared Mickey to try and throw him out at second, a feat that, although fiction, in Mantle's mind, he was able to achieve. The Mick was published in 1985, after Mantle's career had finished. But evidence of this behavior, of this glorifying his own career, this tendency to create and weave a story, it goes back to his playing years. Indeed, it potentially goes back to at least May 6, 1956, with a piece titled, I'll Always Remember, The Night I Didn't Go Home, for Parade magazine that was written by Mickey himself. No joke, it's on page 2. It couldn't be missed if the reader wanted to. Mantle begins his piece. A lot of people think that all you need to be a major league outfielder is the ability to hit and field well. I'd always thought so too, till one day I found there's something else just as important. My dad was the one who showed me. He goes on to tell of the pressure that he had seen not just from the sports writers when they claimed he would be the next DiMaggio, but also from the excitement his dad had shown when he got called up, when he was, quote, the proudest man in Oklahoma. He continues describing his early struggles, being sent down to the Kansas City Blues, the minor league team for the Yankees, and seeing further struggles there. After one game in particular, he wrote, quote, I was feeling real low after one night game, having gone 0 for 5, when I met my dad outside the park. He used to drive up from home to watch me play, and after we talked a while, he got in his car. Dad, I said suddenly, I might as well go home with you. I'll never be able to hit major league pitching. He turned and stared at me. All right, get in, he said. If you've got no more guts than that, you don't belong in the big leagues. His dad had drove home alone, and that was a turning point for Mickey. He would go on to hit 11 home runs and drive in 55 runs and was called back up to the Yankees within 2 months of being sent down. He finishes his parade piece with a poignant message. Quote, I don't think I would have made it without the help of my dad. He died in 1952, but I haven't forgotten what he taught me that night. To succeed in baseball, or anything else, it takes a lot more than ability. It also takes courage. This story lives famously, truly well documented, to the point that even in my son's children's biography of Mantle, 2 pages are dedicated to the conversation Mickey's dad had had with him in that hotel room on the road in Kansas City. Mantle would tell the story for years, while there are particulars that can be debated, like if the conversation happened in a hotel room or a parking lot, whether his dad had told him he, quote, didn't have the guts for the big leagues, or as I can hear Mickey remembering the story later in his life on video recalling, his dad had accused him of being nothing but a coward. It doesn't matter. The mythos of Mickey Mantle doesn't matter. The fact of Mickey Mantle? He was a 20-year-old child when he lost his dad. All the home runs we've fallen in love with, all the moments that have defined our love for number 7, and not more than a handful of them were able to be enjoyed with his dad, someone who very well might have mattered most in Mantle's own life. Mickey Mantle would fight many battles throughout his career and throughout his life. He carried scars, both emotional and physical, taking on the weathering of a seasoned veteran in just his first go-around as a rookie, having his famous drain pipe injury less than 100 games in the big leagues. Indeed, he played just around 100 to 110 games in his big league career before his dad passed away at the age of 40. One can't read Mantle's story and not think of how many games there must have been in the 2,300 that followed after his dad passed away, where, after struggling and going 0 for 5, he would drag or limp his aching legs out of the clubhouse, probably supported on crutches, and wish to see a familiar car sitting in the parking lot. With The Night I Didn't Go Home, in the May 6, 1956 issue of Parade, Mickey Mantle exposed his vulnerability and proved he didn't just have the ability to succeed, he had the courage too. And maybe, for the kids of the world who might not have that familiar car sitting in the parking lot after a tough game, when they're feeling real low, they'll remember how they felt watching Mickey hit those towering shots that left the ballpark and soared through the clouds. And hopefully, God willing, they'll find the courage to succeed too. As always, thanks for listening, and see you next time.